Welcome Miracles Tribe members and members of our Miracles Attraction community on Facebook. I'm Teresa McGallicher and I'm here today with my partner, Carly Hardy, and we have another interesting guest for you in our continuing series on people whose lives have been positively transformed by their practice of A Course in Miracles. Our guest today is Craig Villarubia, coming to you from the Big Island of Hawaii, and Carly will tell you all about him.
Aloha, Craig, and welcome. We're happy to have you today. And a little bit of background on Craig, his bio. He is a teacher of A Course in Miracles. Actually, he sees himself as both a student and a teacher of the Course. As a result of deep study with the Course, Craig experienced what he describes as an ephemeral shift. This awakening inspired him to share the message of peace that came to him. He's traveled internationally, extending the teachings of love. He hosts retreats and speaks at conferences about A Course in Miracles. Craig is also the producer and director of the spiritual documentary titled A Course in Miracles, Enlightenment or Bus, which was released in 2015. And we'll give you a link after this where you can get the documentary. Today, based in Hawaii, he enjoys practicing quartz principles alongside his woodworking and ranching hobbies. There you go. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation and opportunity to share with you all and share with who gets to see this video. As I, take a moment to just contemplate what you are all doing in sharing these stories, it just reminds me of myself and the beginning of my journey with the Course. And I'll get to that in a moment. I'll try to give a chronological order of how I came to the Course, what my life was like before the Course, and certainly what has transpired since adapting the Course and its principles. I previously, before the Course entered my life, probably in the early 2000s, I've always been interested in spirituality, and I've always been inspired by spiritual teachings. But I also have to make note that before the Course, a lot of the spiritual teachings that I had been following were very intellectualized. So I thought I knew spirituality based on the teachings that I had either learned or read about. But the truth is I was still living an experience where I wasn't happy. And I think that's what we all seek, whether it's in spirituality or anything else. We're all trying to heal a part of us that feels broken, or a part of us that is wounded, or that feels unworthy, and so on. And so, like everybody else, in my attempt to find happiness, I hit a lot of dead ends, despite the fact that I really had this spiritual aspiration, because I've always felt like a call to something deeper than what was seemingly available to me at the time. But being conditioned, as many of us are, through what the world says is supposed to make you happy, I went along that route endlessly, and I chased it all kinds of things, everything from money, sex, drugs, status, you name it, and I always ended up at a dead end. And I think as we do the Course or read the text in A Course in Miracles, it's very clear to us that what's laid out in the quote unquote in the world in terms of what we seek for is always going to lead us to this dead end. And ultimately, it would take many, many experiences of coming to the Course to actually do the Course. But the first time I had heard about the Course was through a friend of mine who had quoted the Course to me. And he said at the time something along the lines of, there's no order of difficulty in miracles, which I thought, which just kind of caught me. I was like, oh, that's an interesting this idea that, you know, nothing's, there aren't small miracles or big miracles, and nothing's impossible. They're all equally possible. So if you're going to accept the idea that you believe in miracles, then you have to accept the idea that anything is possible. And I thought that was so inspiring. He said, oh yeah, it was something that I had read in a book called A Course in Miracles. And so very shortly after that experience with him, I had been, there was a bookstore in Los Angeles called the Bodhi Tree Bookstore. It's no longer there, but it was a wonderful resource for all kinds of spiritual books. And I was in there, not looking for A Course in Miracles, but just looking at spiritual books. And sure enough, you know, this blue book stood right in front of me as I was going through the shelves. I'm like, oh, there's the book. That's where the quote came from. And I, you know, I was immediately attracted to the title, A Course in Miracles. And at that time, I was very much invested in this idea of, you know, manifesting your reality and creating your reality and all the things about, you know, holding thoughts and bringing it into your experience. And so this idea of a course in miracles was very attractive to a part of me that was seeking to manipulate my situation or manipulate form. And so I bought it. I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take this course and we're going to do some miracles. But I was sadly disappointed when I got home and realized that I really couldn't get through a page or two of it because I thought the language was so foreign to me. And so I tried really hard. I thought this was the biggest $50 mistake I had made in getting this book. The language, you know, Jesus, the Holy Spirit really wasn't appealing to me. And, you know, in hindsight, it's because those symbols had very strong meanings and represented something to me that was very different than it is certainly now. I grew up Catholic, so to me, the idea of Jesus, the idea of Holy Spirit was one in which I felt a lot of guilt about. I didn't perceive, you know, God at that time. You know, I perceived God as something very different than what I perceive it now. Back then, I thought of God as someone who judged. I thought of God as ultimately something I needed to, you know, praise, or kind of, I had to do all the ritualistic things that, you know, we were taught in Catholicism. It just felt very burdensome. And so I was never really attracted to the language. And so I put the book down. And I think I've heard this story many times amongst course students where they put the book down only to see the book resurface. And so I continue with my spiritual aspirations. I read so many books, like many of us have. And, you know, I remember reading David Hawkins, the Power versus Force, and I have all his collection of books. And within those books, and I'm looking at one of them right now on the shelf, I had learned that he was a course student. And so he would quote A Course in Miracles. I would read, you know, Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle would quote A Course in Miracles. And I kept thinking, geez, that's the book I have on the shelf that it's been sitting there for such a long time. And so, but I had not picked it up. And then I read, I found Gary Renard's book, The Disappearance of the Universe. And in reading parts of it, literally in the bookstore, you know, I noticed that what he was talking about and referencing within this book of his was A Course in Miracles. The only difference is I can kind of read what he was saying and kind of put a little bit, look at the course from a different perspective, and kind of the way he laid out certain principles, and through his storytelling, the principles kind of made sense. So I decided to buy that book. I brought it home, and I remember reading it relatively quickly. And the book is actually pretty dense, thick book as well. But it was interesting enough to keep me engaged and referencing A Course in Miracles. Around that time, I also had come upon Marianne Williamson. I was in Los Angeles at the time, and Marianne was giving a talk every week. So I would go to these talks and listen to Marianne. And what had basically happened is the course kept showing up in my experience, and I was provided tools in which I can translate much of the readings. So I no longer thought of the Holy Spirit in the same way. I no longer thought of the symbols used in the book in the same way. I had others who I would say have gone before me, whether it's Gary or Marianne. And I would also find more teachers on YouTube. This was back when YouTube was just getting started, but there were some videos out there, and all of a sudden it seemed like there was just a clear understanding of what the course was saying to me, and I can resonate with the course in a way that I could not resonate with much earlier. And so ideas and concepts of the course became very helpful and landed with me. And so then I did the workbook, which was really where the work begins, because now we're talking about a daily application of course principles and really applying these principles in my life. And so that was difficult in the beginning, and I think a lot of people have challenges doing the lessons and keeping to it. I would start the lesson, I'd get to lesson 20 and then forget about it for a couple of days, or I'd start all over again and I'd make it to 80 and be so proud of myself and then forget about it again. And I would get really hard, I would beat myself up about it and get really hard on myself on it. But eventually I don't know what clicked, but at some point I'm like, okay, I got to put this simple principle of forgiveness into place with regards to how I'm approaching the course. And so, Course in Miracles is very clear that, forgiveness is to watch without judgment. So yeah, I stopped at certain points. I forgot to continue the lessons, but that's not an issue. The question is, if I could just continue with my persistence, regardless of whether I finished it or not finished it, I can just watch my experience along the way. And what happened is I would stop at lesson 80, and then I would remember, and without judgment, I would just pick up where I left off and I would continue the course. And I was able to get through the entire course lesson, the year lesson, without a problem, because there was no judgment along the way. And about 3/4 into the workbook lessons, I was awakened in the middle of the night, and I had what I would say is one of many different spiritual experiences where this one in particular, it became very clear that what I am is not the body. It's not what I assumed I was. And so there's this experience for me where I was not at the effect of anything around me. I was not at the effect of what I was seeing. I was, and it's very difficult to describe in words. It was very an abstract experience of knowing that what I am is untouched by what I perceive. And I can only describe it as this experience of just love, just complete love, untouchable by anything. And it was beautiful. And there would be moments after that I would have other ones, and there'd be many years that go by, I have none. But the point being is it was an affirmation. Symbolically, the experience itself was an affirmation that the application of these principles was leading me to an experience that the course aims to get me to, which is an experience of peace of mind. And that comes as my idea of myself, the self-concept, is being deconstructed. So as long as I'm willing to give myself up and over to the spirit, then the spirit can be revealed to me. Spirit can be, my true identity can be revealed to me. And so that was a very pivotal moment in my experience, because if you going into anything that contradicts the world, there's always a suspicion. Is this really true? Is this, is there something there? Is it fairy tales? Is it, this woo-woo experience? This made it clear to me, without defining the experience itself just made it clear to me that, yes, this is a path this is a path to what it is that I want, and what I would argue that everybody really wants, which is peace of mind. And so I became very curious about the course, and I'll go back to what I started to say in the beginning with what you are doing right now in extending these messages and reaching out to other course students and teachers. I did the same thing. I was so curious and I wanted to know more about the course, and so that's really what sparked a couple of things. I started a website. I uh, decided I was going to make a movie. And the movie itself was a opportunity to step out of my comfort zone. I had never like made a movie, and I certainly don't even claim to say that I made like a good movie or anything like that. Not that it's bad, but the point being is I wasn't a movie maker, but I was willing to dive into this experience because I was so inspired about bringing this message out. But at the same time, I was also very selfish because I thought, geez, if I do a documentary, this would give me a wonderful opportunity to meet all the people that I want to meet within the course world, which included Gary Renard, at the time, David Hoffmeister, and a whole bunch of other people. I thought this was a good, easy way in to getting to some of the teachers that had inspired me on YouTube and so forth at that point. And so I just jumped in. I called a friend and said, hey, you want to help me out with this? My good friend, Tom Quattrocci. I reached out to teachers, they said yes. And it was just one thing after the other just kind of happened. And I planned a road trip, took my camera in hand. And it was for me as much as it was for anybody else to be able to sit down with these teachers and, hear what I needed to hear from them with what was going on in my life at that time. And at that time, I was still very, very, very much caught up in career, in, financial success, in, nice things, and, kind of just placing my attention on what the course would say is valueless, without value, true value. And I was very much into self pleasures and just all about me. And yeah, you can imagine with that focus, there comes a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear with that. And so this kind of pivot into what the course was saying and the course was teaching allowed me to take a risk. And that risk was to go on the road, learn more about the course. And there were scary moments because as the course would say, one of the things that we may experience with the course is this sense of sacrifice. Do I have to sacrifice all the things that I love? I love, my life in LA and all this fun stuff, or at least I thought I loved parts of it. And so there's this fear of sacrifice and giving up and so forth. And, the beautiful thing is that on the other side is, when you're willing to give everything up, what we're shown is that it is all replaced with something just far greater than we ever could have gotten from our old ways or our old pattern or our old thinking. And so I left my job. My partner and I ended up being inspired by moving to Hawaii. And so we moved to Hawaii. I ended up finishing my film. I, started to engage in doing retreats around the Course of Miracles. We had some retreats out here in Hawaii here at our ranch. We've had retreats. We had a retreat actually in LA. And then, so that kind of marks a period of my life that was just so engaged with the course. And I'm so grateful for the course entering my life in that way. And now it's kind of turned into, in relatively, looking at both before and after the course, now my life is much more a feeling of in the flow in terms of, how my life unfolds. Whereas before I was very, very preoccupied with how my life was supposed to be, how it should be, and how I would make it the way I want it to be. I actually thought that I was in charge. Now my life is very different. Yes, I still do things, but there is a clear understanding and an acceptance that I am not in charge. And that when I say my life is much more in the flow, it simply means that I am responsive to what life is presenting me, or what the Course would say, how the Holy Spirit is guiding me. And so as a result of that, my disappointments are minimized because my expectations are not the same. They're not there. Whereas before, I hit a lot of disappointments because everything that I had planned for, whether it be in a relationship, I remember having clear ideas of what a relationship is supposed to look like and how it should be and who it should be with and what that person should be like. In terms of career, I remember beating myself up because, why can't I have a career that, I've never had a job longer than 4 or 5 years. And I used to beat myself up because I always thought, you're supposed to have a career that lasts 30 or 40 years. And now I realize that in my experience, I am happiest when I don't do the same thing over and over. And so things, there's an acceptance of how my life is unfolding and flowing. And there is a recognition that the Course is very clear that the script is written. And so there's an acceptance of how that's written and a knowing that it is written perfectly. And so I'm just here to show up. And what I've found is, whereas before, this idea that I'm creating my life, creating my self-concept, in charge of all that, before that left me with a sense of responsibility of having to make everything happen and have to take care of myself. I now see my experience that I'm being taken care of. And so there's a relief in that. And there's it's nice to know that and intellectualize that, but when the experience starts to show itself in your life experience, when it starts to happen, there's this conviction that starts to happen. And I'll give you an example. Like, one of the things I always got caught up in is money. And I thought that would be like the biggest thing I'd have to give up. And really what I was saying in my mind about it, it doesn't have to really do with dollars. It's really, I have to give up this idea of wealth. And as a result of doing the Course and following these spiritual principles, I realized that wealth is something completely different. And wealth really has to do with well-being. And I've realized that now I have more wealth in my experience than I've ever had before. But specific to the way it may show up in symbols is, I came out here in Hawaii, we really didn't know what I was going to do. And I talked about this before, and I like to talk about it because I think it's just a wonderful example of how you really can't plan anything. So we came to Hawaii with this idea that we were going to do retreats and we were going to have a cattle ranch and all this fun stuff. But when we showed up, there were a lot of challenges that came with that, which, the cattle industry we had to deal with. And I won't bore you with the details, but I'll just say it wasn't something that we could easily do. And then, with the retreats, it was very overwhelming. As rewarding as they were, it was very overwhelming for us here at the house to be able to handle the amount of people coming through. And so that was becoming not something that was inspiring anymore. And so we would love, how do we maintain this? We have a 200-acre property. It's not cheap. And how do we maintain? Is it meant for us to even stay here after we had left our jobs, given up everything? Long story short is, within the property, we found a forest, an untouched part of the property was an untouched forest of koa wood. And if you don't know, or your listeners don't know what koa wood is, it's basically a very exotic wood and probably one of the most expensive woods in the world. And it's like a light bulb, went off in terms of, oh, maybe this is what we need to pay attention to. And to me, it's like, this is how the Holy Spirit works, is you take risks. The whole point of taking risks and the whole point of following inspiration, and this is really a big part of the movie that I had made in the documentary, the whole point of it is to push you into your places where you're not comfortable, to get you out of your comfortable zone and allow for an experience that wasn't planned for or predicted to come in and sweep you, so you can see that the universe, the Holy Spirit is working in your favor. And as long as you're willing to let go of your own ideas, it can be shown to you. And so this forest came into experience. So it became an experience of, okay, what do we do? And step by step, learning about the wood. Coincidentally, a friend of mine sent me gifted me a wood lathe. And if you don't know what a wood lathe is, it's basically a a tool used to carve wood and make bowls and stuff like that. Mind you, I never worked with wood. I knew nothing about wood. And so, okay, I'm going to take up wood turning. And so that became a passion. And before you knew it, I mean, this is probably as close as you're going to get to money growing on trees. We've had like, a serious demand for, our wood products. We have a whole line of products that have come out of this. I'm in the process of opening up a brand new store in Kailua Kona. I'm as busy as I ever could be doing this stuff that I really enjoy. And it's like, wow, I could have never in a million years have planned this to operate the way it's operating. Now, I want to make also clear that, it isn't like all the problems are gone and there's nothing to worry about. No, this is an opportunity to go deeper with the experience. And so, whereas in my mind, an anxiety may come up about, oh, the store's opening. Will we have product? Will we open up in time? What has happened now versus, probably before the course is that as those fear thoughts come up or anxieties come, what I feel like in my experience now is I'm okay at failure, and I'm okay. I can be okay with things not working out as a result of being willing to go through whatever it is I'm going to go through, knowing that, like I explained in the stories, the universe will always come in and take care of you. So there really is no failure. There always is going to be support. My willingness to watch without judgment, which is to watch the experience without any judgment, whether good or bad, just being able to navigate and using how I feel. Of course, the Miracle says the proper use of judgment is to judge how you feel, using how I feel to guide me. Anytime that I'm not feeling peace or at ease, then I know I've bought into a thought or a system of thinking that isn't true, that isn't aligned with my purpose, which is peace of mind. My purpose is peace of mind at the forefront of everything that I want. Whether we're talking about opening up a new store, I want it to open up by August 1st. Do I want it to open up at August 1st, or do I want to be peaceful? Those are my choices. So wanting to be peaceful is my priority. So if August 1st happens, great. If it doesn't, I will still be peaceful. I will be okay. And so there's this level of trust. This practice continues through my life. And it will continue as long as it's needed. And it's a constant practice of letting go of a thought system, letting go of a thought system, following my inspiration, letting go of the old thought system. And that's all I can say in terms of how I live my life now. And I find myself, less anxiety, less stress, a lot happier, laughing more. I'm never a victim. I can't be a victim of anything. Nothing really hangs on very long. If I do get an upset, it doesn't linger very long. And I welcome that opportunity, because all it is it's just telling me that there's just something there that just needs to be cleaned in the mind. And so I'm good with it. Let's clean it out. Let's welcome this continued, awakening or evolution of awakening through our commitment of ridding ourselves of a system of thinking that really just causes pain and suffering, and opening our mind to the experience of the Holy Spirit. So that's all I want. And that's pretty much my 30-minute synopsis, a story of the last 10, 15 years.
Thank you, Craig. I'm trying to get us back. I seem to have hit a wrong button here. Oh my goodness.
We can hear you, Teresa.
Carly, why don't you
Yeah.
wind it up here for us?
Okay. Yes, thank you, Craig. And I love money growing on trees. It's as close as you can get. That is such a great story. And that you almost found the treasure right there on the land, but that it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. Thank you for helping me see how to be comfortable completely outside of my comfort zone. That's really a beautiful thing. We're so appreciative that you would take time with us, and yes, just all that you shared, and the possibility that we all have to live in the flow. And how can people find you or find the documentary?
Yeah, so I'm always available on social media. So Craig Villarubia on Facebook, or you can, if you want to see the documentary, it's acimdocumentary.com, or you can go to Vimeo and just put in A Course in Miracles, Enlightenment or Bust, and it's there.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yes. Mahalo and aloha.
Mahalo and aloha. Same to you guys. Thank you.